City of Victoria Planning Commission regular meeting for Thursday, March the 21st, 2019. I believe the first order of business is approval of meeting minutes from the last meeting. It's been pointed out, the only thing I see is a little typo on F. I'm not sure, I think it should just be.
Don't take it personally, Ms. Foster.
I move to approve the minutes with the minor correction of item F.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to appear before the commission on citizen communication? Seeing none, we'll move on to our first item, which is the Springwood Medical Park Phase 2 and Spring Hill PUD Phases 1 through 5 preliminary plat. And just an item, I believe we have one commissioner that's going to recuse himself from this consideration of this particular agenda item. Mr. Davis.
Mr. Davis.
Please, go ahead.
That was my dad, wasn't it?
BJ, I think she's
Yeah.
asking you a question.
Oh, you
No, I
asked
just
me a
said you were recusing yourself
Yes,
from
I
this
have
agenda
to.
item.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm involved.
Okay, good evening. So tonight you are considering the preliminary plat of Springwood Medical Park Phase 2 and Spring Hill Plan Unit Development Phases 1 through 6. I would like to point out at this point too, there's a small error in the staff report that showed there would only be 5 phases in the plan unit development. There's actually 6. When they resubmitted after the corrections, they had changed the phasing. So it is proposed for those two sections of the medical park and the plan unit development. The preliminary plat consists of 4 general commercial lots and 115 residential lots with associated common areas on approximately 45 acres, which is off of Nursery Drive and located between the Springwood subdivision and the DeTar North Hospital. The 4 general commercial lots meet all applicable City of Victoria regulations, but the plan unit development varies in various ways. And that plan unit development, of course, that's 115 residential lots. And the deviations that are proposed is the PUD is proposed to be developed as a private gated community, so the streets would not be public right-of-way. They will be private access easements that can then be gated or allows the subdivision to be gated. Secondary access to the subdivision is proposed to be through an access easement towards the front and then also a future phase stub out as of a private street at the rear of the subdivision, which would not occur until other development on the Rosenquist tract were to happen. The private streets are proposed to be made of concrete and only 29 feet in width, which differs from the City of Victoria's standard specifications, but it does match the street design of the Tuscany subdivision, which was approved by variance in 2008, so it is a street design that we are familiar with. 91 of the 115 lots are less than the minimum 6,000 square feet that's generally required for single-family residential. But as I mentioned, there's 2 common areas that offset that higher density. The developer is also, like I said, proposing those 2 common areas, which total 5.36 acres, and will also have an approximately 1,200-foot walking trail. And then the last deviation is that the sidewalks proposed to be throughout the development are 4-foot sidewalks, which are allowed by the city standards when they're set back off the curb by a foot, and these are proposed to be attached to the back of curb, which generally requires a 5-foot in the standard specifications of the city. Staff does recommend approving this preliminary plat for the 4 general commercial lots and for the 115 residential lot gated community with private streets with only one condition, and that be that deed restrictions be submitted and approved by the city that outlines how all of this private infrastructure, the streets primarily, will be maintained in the future before any final plat is approved and filed. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions?
Does that deed restriction mean before any construction can begin?
Yes, because it would be before the final plat is approved, and with the final plat, we receive construction plans, so they would go in tandem.
Would that include details about the proposed detention pond on the commercial tract?
Because one thing I noted was that there's a pond shown in the planned unit development plan, but not on the plat itself. There's not any note on there. There's no drainage easement. There's no note about a potential commercial, owner association or something to maintain the pond. So I would just want to make sure that there's going to be something in a legal capacity that holds the pond maintenance accountable.
So you can, maybe the developer's agent is here and can maybe expand on that, but generally, yes, those details are all worked out in the construction phase. With it being not on common area and being located on private lot, we wouldn't necessarily look to requiring deed restrictions to take that into account, because the private law owner would be ultimately responsible if the pond is on their land.
Yeah, so but the pond is on their land, but does it serve multiple lots, correct? It will pick up drainage for multiple lots? So it would seem like with the flow coming from multiple lots, that you would want to make sure that it's something that covers everybody in that development, not just that one lot owner.
Like just that.
And there would end up being, public water drainage easements through the sanitary sewer system too, as necessary.
Thank you.
Because you will have that road in there that I imagine would carry most of the water through the sanitary sewer system. I mean, not sanitary.
Stormwater
Stormwater.
runoff.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I just want to bring up, I know there's nothing we can do about it, but I think this is just going to increase the traffic burden on Nursery Drive. And at some point, I don't know how we get the city to do something about that road.
The thoroughfare master plan does show another connection, extending one of those, I think it's maybe James Coleman Drive or Medical Drive, extending it out farther to the north east and connecting with the loop. Excuse me. And once development occurs on that Rosenquist property, that road will be required because it is shown on our thoroughfare master plan. And so at the time of that development, there will definitely,
Oh, I see what you mean. That road is going to
Help.
tie into the feeder
yes, and that's
to
on,
Zach Lentz?
and that's on the thoroughfare master plan.
Okay.
So
Good,
yes,
ultimately.
it will ultimately be required.
And it's going to take a while, I would think, for this PUD to develop in terms of actually having people and cars and traffic there.
The commercial is proposed to be developed first
And then the PUD.
and then the residential, but commercials usually are higher traffic generator as well than single-family residential.
And then just this one other thing I was curious about, like these common areas, is that all in before, I guess, any homes are built, or is that?
Yes, so that's what those
Okay.
deed restrictions
All right.
would take care
I
of
understand.
at the final plating stage.
Can you give us some history on the Tuscany variance with the 29-foot roadways? I personally don't have any objection. I did research and stuff on how apparently 29-foot roads are better for safety, because then you can't have, 2 cars parked and then 2 cars in the middle, and so people have to yield, and it just generally lowers
Things down.
that. But yeah, what's the background on why Tuscany? Was Tuscany meant to set a precedent, or was it meant because of extenuating circumstances, or?
So in reading the resolution and the staff report for the Tuscany, I think it was really to try something new and really promote concrete streets to provide or to help with the long-term maintenance of new residential subdivision streets for the city of Victoria.
That's what I remembered you. I wasn't, but this concrete issue, that road size, I know I brought it up some years ago, and the maintenance, the concrete road was the major driving force behind it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion on approving the preliminary plat? Is that the first?
There is a public hearing on this.
Oh, we do need to open, sorry, I'd like to open the public hearing now. Is there anyone here to testify on this agenda item? Apparently not, so we'll close the public hearing. And any other discussion from the members? Do we have a motion on approving the preliminary plat?
I move to approve.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Preliminary plat's approved. I believe the next agenda item is Country Lane Townhomes re-subdivision number 1.
Yes, so this is a re-subdivision of a preliminary plat that was approved in December 2013. The preliminary plat showed 2 lots in which one was final platted and developed. The property owners are now requesting to re-subdivide this to combine all of the land that they own into one lot. To allow the expansion of the Country Lane Townhome development. With this expansion, the utilities will be relocated, and therefore existing platted easements are being changed with this plat, which is why it's a major plat and must come to Planning Commission. Normally, these sort of small things usually are handled as minor plats, but staff doesn't have the ability to change platted easements, so that's why you're seeing it tonight. But staff does recommend approval, finding it meets all of our applicable regulations.
Any discussion?
Why do you always look over here?
Well, okay, I'll remember the discussion.
I'm sorry, that's why.
Okay, we'd like to open a public hearing on this agenda item. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address the council on this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Do I have a motion on approval?
I'll move to approve.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Other business.
So this is our February 2019 monthly development report. You'll see that we had 2 minor plats, the 2 major plats that you just considered this evening, and then we received 3 site plans. Victoria's Retail Village Ring Road Extension, which was essentially a drive extension near Kohl's. Ashley Furniture Retail Store, which is being developed in front of their new warehouse at the Loop and Salem. And then McDonald's had some minor amendments to their site plan for their rebuild in front of the mall. You'll see our permit numbers. We continue to do less than last year, and we'll probably see that trend continue since last year we were so busy in the rebuild and seeing so many repair permits from the hurricane.
Any questions? Are there any items from planning commissioners they'd like to bring up?
I do. Don't know why I did that in a sing-song voice, but you're welcome. In reviewing the plat for Springwood, one thing that popped into my mind was the homes that are adjacent to the floodplain. And that while I don't think it's something that should be required on a preliminary plat, I think it's prudent to require finished floor elevations for the homes that are going to be adjacent to a floodplain on a final plat. But when I read through the manual, that's not a requirement anywhere. It's a requirement in the ETJ, which is odd. It's also a requirement in the county, but it's not a requirement in the city. And I was wondering if that is something that staff could look into. I don't know if it's something that could be compared, between different entities, but, not necessarily this particular development, but oftentimes there are developments that have multiple builders coming in or people that are building their own homes, and the only thing they have to go by is a plat. And they might know that they're near a creek, but they don't necessarily know at what elevation they need to be building their pad to. It is a requirement to build your pad to a certain elevation from the drainage criteria manual, but it's not called out on the plat, and I think that's what a lot of people refer to. So it was just a concept to consider possibly requiring minimum finished floor elevations on a final plat.
We'll take that into consideration. We've had a lot of discussion about that with the county requiring it now as well. So we'll take that to our engineering office and see how best to look into it, if it should be in our standard specifications or drainage manual, or should be a requirement in our ordinance.
Thank you.
Anything else? I think the meeting's adjourned. Thank you all very much. It looks like there's